Hello, YouTubers. Welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. This is the second out of 3 episodes that I have for you this morning. There are 4 articles in this episode, and the URLs are listed in the description of this video for your convenience. The first article I have for you here is off of the Conservative Daily Post, and it says, "Family of girl murdered by illegals denied appeal. Judge says sanctuary city laws protect refugees." Liberal politics have plunged to such despicable depths that San Francisco politicians are fighting to protect a known psychopath. A local judge dismissed a heartbreaking lawsuit on the grounds that San Francisco's experimental leftist policies shield the city from prosecution. Katie Steinle, age 32, was reportedly shot dead by Juan Francisco Lopez Sanchez, age 45, a Mexican national with a long criminal record who was allowed to remain in the country due to the city's controversial sanctuary policies, reports the Daily Mail. Lopez Sanchez is a vicious man who doesn't deserve to walk free in any country, let alone America. The U.S. isn't a dumping ground for Mexican criminals. Lopez Sanchez should have been unceremoniously shipped home the moment authorities became aware of his existence. San Francisco, however, may as well be the capital of liberal La La Land. Not only did the city's foolish sanctuary laws keep a crazed killer on the streets, those same laws are now being used to deny justice to the victims' families. Kate was simply taking a stroll on the pier with her father when she was cruelly gunned down by Lopez Sanchez. The monster shot her in the back in total broad daylight. The stunning violence was utterly unprompted. Kate was an innocent young woman. Her family filed a wrongful death suit against the city, arguing that if officials had done their jobs and notified Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, when they realized career felon Lopez Sanchez from prison, when they released career felon Lopez Sanchez from prison in April of 2015, Kate's death would have been avoided. Kate's death was both foreseeable and preventable had the law enforcement agencies, officials, and officers involved simply followed the laws, regulations, and/or procedures which they swore to uphold, the lawsuit said. But apparently, San Francisco is above federal law. At least it is according to Judge Joseph C. Sparrow. He dismissed the Steinle family's lawsuit, writing, "No law required the sheriff's department to share Lopez Sanchez's release date with ICE, nor did any law forbid Mirkamari establishing a policy against such cooperation." In other words, San Francisco aligns itself with criminals. The city's government protects the rights of illegal immigrants at the expense of citizens. It's bad enough that Obama's weak border policies opened the floodgates for millions of illegals, but now idiotic politicians are actually fighting to grant amnesty to every illegal. The so-called dreamers, the helpless young mothers straddled with multiple babies, the parents struggling to provide their children with a good life. There are many undocumented migrants whose situation arouses sympathy. Lopez Sanchez is not one of those migrants. He is a vile person. California officials knew that he was a terrible person, and they knew that he had no legal right to be in the country, yet they still allowed him to stay. Who deserves to be deported if not a 7-time felon with violent tendencies? Sanctuary cities have no clear definition or geographic limit. They are scattered throughout the country and generally limit the ability of government workers to assist the federal government with immigration matters, writes the Daily Mail. In San Francisco, the city and county refugee ordinance passed in 1989 prohibits the city employees from helping federal immigration enforcement efforts unless compelled by court order or by state law. Lopez Sanchez stole the gun he used to kill Kate from an unattended Bureau of Land Management vehicle. Kate was killed because of San Francisco's lenient attitude toward illegals. The city knew that Lopez Sanchez was scum, but continued to shelter him anyway. Obama's presidency emboldened the radical left. Sanctuary cities and campuses sprung into existence around the country. Political pressure forced him to crack down on a few of them, but hundreds still remain. Donald Trump faces a difficult task. He has to clean up the mess that Obama's been making for the past 8 years. Illegal immigration is a bigger problem than when Obama first took office. The only real changes that his administration made to immigration policy were to make it easier for illegals to remain in the country. He championed the Dreamers, undercut Border Patrol, and allowed hundreds of thousands of refugees to resettle stateside. Obama's liberality toward illegals encouraged actions like Judge Sparrow's. The outgoing president created a climate of disrespect toward the law. Trump, meanwhile, has already indicated that his administration plans to fully eradicate the nation's sanctuary cities. What happened to Kate could have been avoided. With reasonable people in charge, Lopez Sanchez would never have been allowed to remain in America. Considering his long and bloody criminal history, deporting him should have been considered a priority. Kate's death caused an uproar when it occurred last year and became a rallying cry for Donald Trump's immigration policies while on the campaign trail, journalists note. Obama remained silent and left it to Trump to denounce liberal sanctuary cities. The next article that I have for you is off of the All News Pipeline, and it says, be prepared for independent news blackout if all hell breaks loose on Friday, Inauguration Day. And you know that over the last few weeks, the Drudge Report suffered massive DDoS attacks, the first knocking the popular news aggregation site offline for about an hour and a half. The second time it was unavailable periodically during about an hour time frame. What many did not catch, because it only lasted for a few minutes, was on January the 15th of 2017. We started seeing chatter about Drudge Report showing a cached version of its page with news from 10 days previously, from January 5th of 2017. Stephen Stanford grabbed a screenshot where the date was taken is shown in the lower right corner in the image below. The image was too large to lift on a page or fit on a page its original size, so the click image, and you can click a link to take you to that, to enlarge so you can see the timestamp in the lower right corner of when the image was taken. It will open in a new tab window. A look through Drudge's archive pages shows that was what his page looked like on January the 5th of 2017. Archives are here. There's a link you can click on for that. Date and time of the original page is here. There's another link, as seen in the URL itself when you click that link. Just one day later, on January the 16th, 2017, Monday, we reloaded Steve Quayle's site to see if he had posted anything new, and the date listed on his site, as well as the articles he linked, were from 1/12/16, showing a page that was 4 days old rather than his current page. As with the Drudge Report incident, the cached version of the site only lasted for minutes. Then the updated live version was available again. In the screenshot below, I opened the image I took along with the properties to show that the file was created on 1/16/2017, yet his page date on top is 1/12/17. And for an enlarged image, you can click a link here and it'll take you to that so you can see what he's talking about. It says many services offer a way to keep the site online even if the original server goes offline, such as Always Online from Cloudflare, which is a feature that caches a static version of your pages in case your server goes offline, according to their website. Or the Google Cached Page service, where Google crawls the web and takes snapshots of each page as a backup just in case the current page is not available, according to Cached View. As seen from the descriptions, the cached version of the pages are shown when a server goes offline or the current page is not available. In both cases, the site in question, Quayle's and Drudge's, were only unavailable for minutes before the current live versions were available again. So a short time that none of us would have noticed had we not happened to click on the links in just that very short time frame. Both the Drudge's and Quayle's websites have extraordinary capacity for traffic, so there is no reason their site should have been showing cached versions or have gone offline for even a minute. Almost like some entity was testing the ability to knock heavily trafficked independent media sites offline, as was done with the massive DDoS attacks against Drudge just weeks ago, where Matt Drudge himself asked if the U.S. government was behind it. The timing of the Drudge DDoS attacks, then the latest strangeness of periodically not being able to access certain independent media sites just to have them suddenly come back up again within minutes. Then over the last 2 days, the examples shown above where a very short time, two prominent sites were forced to show old cache versions before going live again. All happening leading up to Friday, the day Trump is to be inaugurated. With attacks being planned, protesters organized chaos in an attempt to prevent inauguration, and weapons caches have been found close to the inauguration location was enough to cause concern. We already know from Reader this morning that Blue Lives Matter has reported that the DC police are being prohibited from having their on-body cameras turned on during the inauguration protest. So if police have to arrest somebody, then they can turn on them, but they will be unable to provide a camera footage of what led to the arrest. I reached out to a trusted ANP source and asked if TB were preparing for some type of independent media blackout if all hell was to break loose Friday, leaving Americans with nothing but the mainstream media's reporting upset events. The answer I received was not comforting, as I was told to remember the CIA and the NSA have real control of the internet, and was asked who is at war with Trump. That's a reference to the tense back and forth going on right now between the outgoing CIA director John Brennan and President-elect Donald Trump. Law enforcement is on high alert for the inauguration, security tight, but they are expecting nearly 1 million people or more between the inauguration, the celebrations, and dozens upon dozens of groups planning protests, some of which have made it clear they have no problem using violent means. So while it is quite possible the day will move forward with nothing more than a few incidents here and there and a limited number of arrests, there's also high chance that all hell could break loose. The question here is whether independent media will be blacked out for a long enough period to make sure the mainstream media gets to spin it any way they want. Just in case, people should be prepared for an independent news blackout if chaos rules the day on Friday, January the 20th, 2017. Better to be prepared and have nothing happen than have something happen and not be prepared. With that said, AMP can be accessed direct, and they give the IP number. It says Quayle's site has an IP number. If AMP goes down for any reason, we will try to utilize my old political blog, Wake Up America, here, and there's a link for that. Some important information for us to be able to obtain any information on what is actually going on Friday, should the government decide to knock out regular way we view things here on the internet. The next one we have here is off of Blue Lives Matter, and this is kind of a follow-up to what was just mentioned in that other article. This says DC police prohibited from having body cameras on at Inauguration Day protests. All DC police officers have recently been outfitted with body cameras, but they will be in serious trouble if they have them on during the Inauguration Day protests. NBC News 4's Mark Seagraves reported that it's against the law for body cameras to be on while police are at protests unless the officer is required to take action. This means that officers can turn the camera on when they want to arrest somebody, but they will be unable to capture what led up to the arrest. America has a lot of recent experiences with Black Lives Matter protests devolving into riots. Oftentimes, the only lead to determining the identities of criminal rioters is camera footage. In the 2015 Baltimore riots, was captured on camera squirting lighter fluid on propane tanks. At the Portland election riots, November 2016, Mateen Shahid was captured on camera causing $50,000 worth of damage. During the 2016 Charlotte riots, police were able to use footage to identify the killer who gunned down Justin Carr. Further, it's fairly standard practice for police to have designated cameramen at protests so the department cannot only show evidence of criminal activity, but the department can defend itself from false claims. Following the Ferguson rioting, a $41.5 million lawsuit against the city was dismissed by a judge when video shows that the complainants were lying. Robert Patrick with the St. Louis Post-Dispatch reported Tracy White alleged she and her 17-year-old son were violently arrested inside a Ferguson McDonald's. She further embellished the story, claiming that the officers with rifles converged on them like something out of a movie. White stated that as she tried to give her son an iPad she was carrying, they arrested her son, and as she protested the treatment of her son, she too was thrown to the ground and arrested while officers used racial slurs. White must have forgotten or not known that the video actually showed her being arrested a block away from the McDonald's. She agreed that the video showed an officer placing hand ties on her and that she was not on the ground and that there was no knee in her back, Autry wrote. No racial epithets or slurs were used against Tracy White. Groups who intend on breaking the law during the Inauguration Day protests know that cameras are their greatest threat in being identified and prosecuted, so they complained that it would violate their constitutional rights for them to be recorded in a public place where they had no expectation of privacy. One nonsense like this is repeated enough, people start to accept it as fact, even though it has no basis in reality. Cowardly administrators either believe it or are too afraid of a lawsuit, so they hamstring the police to cater to criminals. But while the ACLU is pushing to prohibit police recording citizens in public, they are also pushing an app called to be used to record the police and send the recordings to the ACLU for review. In addition to the peaceful protesters, Black Lives Matter and anarchist groups have claimed that they are going to shut down the inauguration, already giving officers reason to believe that there will be criminal activity at the protests. Now, thanks to that hug-a-thug crowd, many of the criminals will likely escape prosecution. So there you have that one. And the final one in this episode is off of BizPac Review, and it says Lamont Hill steps in, or try that again. Lamont Hill steps in it by calling Trump's diversity coalition mediocre Negroes, then digs himself in even deeper. And this reads, it appears that an African-American celebrity can't take a meeting with President-elect Donald Trump without being dismissed as a mediocre Negro, at least according to the Morehouse College professor and CNN commentator Mark Lamont Hill. On Monday's CNN Tonight, Hill once again accused Donald Trump of being racist, but he also slammed any black person who would dare take a meeting with him as being an inconsequential person. The name calling started after CNN host Don Lemon reported that black comedian Steve Harvey met with Donald Trump. Hill made it known that he thought it was a stunt, basically calling Harvey a little more than a know-nothing entertainer, and demanded Trump bring in people with some expertise. Hill then went on to blast Trump's diversity coalition when who he called a bunch of mediocre Negroes being dragged in front of TV as photo op for Donald Trump's exploitive campaign against black people. I love Steve Harvey and I have respect for Steve Harvey, and I think his intentions were accurate, or appropriate rather, but my disagreement is in the way which he's being used by folk like Donald Trump. Again, his intention is just to have a seat at the table. But when you're at the table, you should have experts at the table. You should have people who can challenge the president at the table, because they keep bringing up comedians and actors and athletes to represent Black interests is demeaning, it's disrespectful, it's condescending. Bring some people up there with some expertise, Donald Trump. Just don't just bring up people to entertain. He'll dismiss Steve Harvey because he isn't a policy analyst, and went on to wave off Harvey as just another one of the people Trump is trumpeting up and putting up in front of the camera. Feeling the heat after calling any Black person who worked with Trump a mediocre Negro, Hill jumped on Twitter to claim that he wasn't calling Harvey a mediocre Negro, just the folks on his diversity council. And there's a tweet of this here. It says, really? One look at Trump's diversity coalition shows an impressive list of accomplished people from all walks of life, not to mention Martin Luther King Jr.'s niece, Alveda King, who serves as the coalition's spiritual advisor. As you were saying, Hill, as if he didn't step in it enough, Hill also went out of his way to attack Dr. Ben Carson as mediocre. And in a tweet, he says, Carson is mediocre choice for HUD as human. He's extraordinary. My goodness gracious. Some people, they just need to shut up. If you like what we're doing here, give it a thumbs up, share it on your social media. Don't forget to subscribe. Click that little bell next to the subscription button and check the box so you get email messages every time I put a show up, and that way you'll stay informed. I've got one more episode. I'll see you then.